one question we had is with the public option. We're seeing this yesterday where, the possible concession on it could lose the House but gain the Senate. I mean, how likely is it that a public option could get through the Senate?
I begin with single payer, which I think ought to be on the table. Doesn't have a whole lot of support, but at the start I think we ought to be flexible and consider everything, including single payer. I think that the robust public option is the best idea. I've backed that with statements on the Senate floor, and as President Obama says, that will help to keep the insurance companies honest.
Now, what about what we're hearing from the House lately? Is they're saying, essentially that the House is the one which can't pass something without a public option. They're saying the Senate, though, it may not have a chance. I mean, do you think a public option could make it through the Senate?
I think we could have a public option, and I think we ought to press hard to get it. And I think we have to discount a lot of the anger which I saw last week at the public meetings. I believe that the anger out there is from a lot of factors, and healthcare is only a flashpoint. I have had 4 town meetings. I think people like Arlen Specter ought to be out there pushing the president's health care plan, taking the facts to the people, dispelling the kind of talk that Sarah Palin has to say that there are going to be death councils. That simply is untrue. And I think carrying the message in these town meetings, tough as it is and argumentative and hot as it is something that guys like Arlen Specter ought to be doing to help President Clinton, President Obama state the facts to get some comprehensive health care reform.
I know that's a concern. I've heard from some Democrats recently. They say that they're concerned this is a Kerry campaign all over again, where the Democrats haven't been aggressive enough, in some of these things which aren't true, like the death panels. I mean, do you think the Democrats have been pushing back enough against some of these messages?
I believe people like they ought to be out there helping the president, going to these town meetings. They're aggressive and they're tough, but that's the pay grade. And the only way to get the health care package accomplished and carry out what President Obama is trying to do is to put the facts before the American people. And sometimes that requires a loud voice and persistence and facing angry crowds, but that's what needs to be done.
And you've also said that you don't think, these angry crowds we've seen are really representative, if the people at these town hall meetings may not represent the towns they're in.
Well, the people who are coming are organized, but in America you have a right to be organized, and I don't criticize them. But I also say they are not representative of America. Yesterday we had a town meeting with Secretary of Veterans Affairs Sinsekik. I brought him to Philadelphia to talk to veterans, and it was orderly, civil, constructive commentary on what veterans need, and I think that's more representative of America than the people who were bussed into Lebanon County to raise hell last Tuesday.
Overall, yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen, some of your town halls have made the most national news in some of those, but overall, have you felt, what have you taken away from these town halls? I mean, besides the anger, has it been a good chance to hear some, regular people here?
I have taken away from the town halls that there's a lot of misunderstanding. That people do not understand that it's for middle-class America that you need to restrain the cost of health care. That there are a lot of vicious, untrue rumors like death panels. And that if you present the facts to the American people and they understand, I think they will support President Obama's call for comprehensive health care reform.
Where do you think, it's not only anger, there's an element of fear here with death panels. Where do you think this comes from?
Well, it comes from misrepresentations. Look, nobody ought to decide for anybody else what kind of health care they're going to get in extremis. But people ought to have the opportunity to be counseled. If they don't want the counseling, fine. But they ought to do it in a calm moment when they're not in a hospital, where they can talk to their family and relatives and make a rational decision. And then it's up to them. Choices are a basic Americana.
All right. Well, about the party switch, this happened a little while ago, but I think this is the first time we've seen you up here since then. And, there are some on both sides of the aisle who are, not convinced at this point that it's, legit. What would you say?
Well, when the stimulus package came up and we faced the threat of sliding into a 1929 Depression. That was the moment when I voted for the stimulus and really joined the Democratic Party and joined the President Obama administration on backing the stimulus. Look here, it's provided $16 billion for Pennsylvania, 143,000 jobs, including $1.5 million to hire 6 extra police officers for Erie. That's important for public security.
Yeah, well, of course, you said at the time of the switch that, you didn't think it was right for you to be judged by the, Republican electorate anymore. Of course, they did for 5 elections. Do you think it's that they've moved to the right or you've moved to the left?
Well, I have joined the Obama team when I voted for the stimulus. And at that moment, I returned to my roots. I had been years ago a JFK Democrat. My parents, immigrants, tough depression, were Franklin Delano Roosevelt Democrats. But the critical vote was supporting the stimulus, which I thought was indispensable for the public good. And in that vote, I rejoined sort of like the prodigal son, coming back to the Democratic Party.
And one other thing which you've evolved on is the card check issue. Again, there are skeptics out there. What is it that, made you change your mind?
I've been consistent on the issue of employee's choice. 2 objectives are important. One is union certification, and the other is the first contract. And I'm not going to give up the secret ballot. That's fundamental in America. So I've been consistent on that. And in my statement earlier in the year, I said arbitration could work if it was carefully structured on last best offer, similar to baseball arbitration, which brings the parties together.